Hello and welcome to the F1 News Zone, the show where we round up all the biggest stories in Formula 1 right now. F1 is still in its off-season, but we've finally seen the cars' liveries for the first time this week at the London O2 Arena. But which other stories have grabbed the attention this week though? This week, Felipe Massa has called Fernando Alonso two-faced. We look at why Charles Leclerc's reputation is on the line this year, and Formula 1 could make a return to France, but not to Magny Cours or Paul Ricard. It would be to Paris. We take a look at all that and a whole lot more in today's show. Let's dive in. So we've spoken a lot about Ferrari in this season coming up, how we've got Sir Lewis Hamilton joining the team, about how they could well challenge for the Constructors' World Championship. They came so close in 2024, and of course both of their drivers, Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, will be aiming to become Formula 1 World Champion this year. That has to be their aim. Now we've spoken a lot about Hamilton and how his legacy is on the line, how his reputation is on the line. You know, some people think that he's washed, he's a has-been, he's too old, he can't do it anymore in Formula 1, which I honestly reject that claim, because for a start you've got Fernando Alonso still being a top driver in my opinion, who's 3 years older than Hamilton. He might be even older than that, to be honest. But we've not spoken too much about Leclerc, because Leclerc is a guy that I really rate highly, that a lot of people think is good enough to be a world champion, but the only time he's ever come close to winning the world championship was in 2022. In those early stages of the season, Ferrari and Red Bull exchanged wins, but it quickly fell away. He made some mistakes, most notably at the French Grand Prix, where he just spun off a mistake that at the time I could not believe he actually made. I thought it had to have been some sort of mechanical issue to be able to do that, but it was his fault. But let's talk about Leclerc. Let's talk about how his reputation could be on the line this season in 2025. Because if Sir Lewis Hamilton, who is older 40 years of age, comes in and absolutely wipes the floor with Leclerc, which I don't think will happen. I think that's very unlikely to happen. But if that was to happen, it'd make him look rather bad at that point. It really would ask questions about how good this guy is. I think the likelihood of that happening is extremely slim for a number of reasons. But let's have a look at this article here on the F1Chronicle.com, guys, because like I said, it's something that's not really been spoken about that much when it comes to this upcoming season. One of Italy's most celebrated Formula 1 journalists thinks that Charles Leclerc's reputation is on the line in 2025. Although just 27 this year will be Leclerc's 8th consecutive season on the grid, and he retains his reputation as one of F1's very best drivers, but some have begun to question whether he will ever break through for a title. This year, the Monegasque is being joined at Ferrari by 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton. But Alevi, whose time at La Gazzetta dello Sport dates all the way back to Enzo Ferrari's days, wow, this guy is experienced, thinks that Charles Leclerc may well have a point to prove this year. The fact that someone said that Hamilton's arrival is good for Leclerc because it will allow him to grow is something that Charles probably didn't like, he wrote in his latest column for Auto Sprint. While Hamilton has already won so much, Leclerc has to beat his new teammate to defend his reputation at Ferrari, and in Formula 1, he added, a defeat would make Leclerc eternally second. Strong words, but I see where he's coming from. While Ferrari team boss Frederic Vasseur is famously close to Leclerc, also true is that Vasseur's relationship with Hamilton also stretches back to his junior Formula days when Charles Leclerc was not even a teenager. They go back all the way to the GP2 days in 2006, of course, if not even before that. Charles has been described as probably a little prematurely as il predestinato. Oh my god, my Italian's terrible. The predestined champion, Alevi continues. But someone at Ferrari has already described Hamilton as the Messiah, which suggests to me that the team already has sided with him. That puts Charles in a tricky position, he concludes. I don't know. I won't read. I mean, yeah, you can call Hamilton a lot of things. People have got a lot of names for him, put it that way. A lot of good names, some bad names too. We'll focus on the good though here for this video. Yeah, I mean, look, like I said, I think that the situation that Leclerc finds himself is a challenging one. And I also think that the situation that Hamilton finds himself is a challenging one too, because you've got two alpha males, you've got two top dogs there effectively, you know, Hamilton at Mercedes for so long. And I know people will say, oh, he got beaten his last few seasons. He was still the main man. He was still the main man. The paychecks don't lie at the end of the day. Criticize him all you want. He was the main guy at Mercedes, and they didn't want to get rid of him either. And you've got Charles Leclerc, who has been the main man at Ferrari, undisputably, really, since 2020, since he absolutely destroyed Vettel in that season. You know, for me, he's been the top dog in that team for a long time. So it's going to be interesting. There is potential for flare-ups. There is potential for big problems. I mean, we've seen this in teams before. Go all the way back to Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna at McLaren. 2 top drivers in the same team. It did not mix. It did not go particularly well. Yes, they had a lot of success, of course, but from a team dynamics point of view, it was a nightmare. Now, I don't really see that with this. I don't really see that. And of course, you know, Hamilton has experience of difficult teammates. His first his rookie season in 2007, who was his teammate? Fernando Alonso. And they only lasted at that team together for a season. Alonso went back to Renault for 08. Now, I don't see that happening with this. I feel like there's a much different dynamic. The problem is what you usually get, in my experience, I mean, it's not always the case. There are exceptions to it. Think Jacques Villeneuve and Jenson Button at Honda, early 2000s. Those two didn't get on at all, and those two had completely different dynamics. Villeneuve was, of course, a champion in 1997, looking to resurrect his career. Button was very much one of the up-and-comers in Formula 1 at that time. They didn't get on. But in general, when there's a very different dynamic between two different drivers, they do get on. Look at Hamilton and Bottas. Hamilton names Valtteri Bottas as his favourite teammate ever in Formula 1 because I think he said something like he was no nonsense, no rubbish, no 2 letters that I can't say together, otherwise this video will be monetized, but you can guess what they are. You know, and there was a very different dynamic there. Bottas, younger driver, someone who had never won a world championship, never even won a race before he went to Mercedes. Hamilton, multiple world champion, looking to become one of the GOATs of the sport, and he did that, of course. And I see something similar here with Leclerc and Hamilton too. It's a very different dynamic. You've got Hamilton as the most successful driver in the history of the sport, looking to join the most successful team in the history of the sport and become, without a doubt, you know, one of the, I mean, he's already one of the GOATs for sure, but at that point, you are then one of the GOATs for Ferrari, which is a different thing. That is a different thing, you know. And it would take a lot for him to do that, but stranger things have happened. And then you've got Charles Leclerc, who's trying to win Ferrari's first world title as a driver for the first time since 2007. Helped them to win their first title of any kind since 2008 when they won the Constructors. So it's a very different dynamic between the two drivers. They always say that opposites attract and similar personalities clash. I see them as not quite opposites, but different enough not to have the same kind of problems as what you might have at other teams. But like I said, there are examples where two very different drivers do clash. Sebastian Vettel and Mark Webber being another really good example of that at Red Bull. They were very different drivers, different personalities, different points in their career, but they did not like each other towards Red Bull. So we'll see what happens. For my money, I think they'll get on and they'll do all right, but there is always that potential there. There is always that potential there for a flare-up, particularly if, you know, Leclerc feels like he's been hard done by or something. If that narrative that this journalist is trying to get across does end up manifesting itself, Leclerc could lose it. He could make a mistake. He could do something silly. And the same thing could happen to Hamilton too. Although the likelihood of Hamilton doing something outrageous, in my opinion, is very low. We've not really seen that side of him ever in Formula 1, and I feel like we would have seen it by now if it would have happened. I know there's been some dodgy incidents here and there with Hamilton over the years, but you compare the controversies with Hamilton on track to Alonso, Verstappen, Schumacher, you're really going at slim pickings there. But what do you guys think? How will Hamilton and Leclerc get on at Ferrari? Is this kind of a last chance saloon for Leclerc? Not for Hamilton, for Leclerc really, because if he doesn't perform, if he gets beaten by Hamilton in his own team, the team that he's been with since he was a boy basically, it's a pretty bad look at that point, isn't it? It's not great for Leclerc, and it's not going to do his confidence any good either. Your thoughts in the comments below. The Grand Prix was invented in Paris over 100 years ago, and the FIA, the governing body of a lot of world motorsports, including Formula 1, is also based in Paris. On top of that, we have Alpine, who are a French team, and several French drivers currently in the field, such as Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly. Going further back too, there was a world champion, a 4-time world champion, and some say the best champion ever, Alain Prost, who competed in the 1980s and 1990s. But despite all of that, France has no Grand Prix on the calendar and hasn't had one for a number of years. In truth, it's had a real troubled place on the Formula 1 calendar, even when it has been on the calendar. Magny Cours and Paul Ricard both have many problems, and there aren't many other options really when it comes to a Grade 1 circuit. unless they make a new one perhaps. And this might be what Flavio Briatore is suggesting. Now, of course, Flavio is one of the senior advisors for Renault and also Alpine as well. He basically runs Alpine. He's not the team principal, but we all know who calls the shots, and it's definitely not Oliver Oat. Greatest respect to the guy, that's just a fact. But let's have a look at what he said here. Now, you guys know that I'm not a big fan of Flavio, to say the least, but on his day, on occasion, even a broken clock is right twice a day. So let's have a look at what Flavio said about a potential French return for Formula 1. Full article on the F1chronicle.com. Formula 1 should return to France with a race in the capital city. That is the view of Alpine's flamboyant and famous advisor Flavio Briatore, just days after FIA President Mohamed Ben Sulayem ruled France as absent from the calendar since 2022. It's good to open up new countries, but we mustn't forget where the story began, he told Le Figaro. When asked about that, Briatore fully agreed with the controversial FIA president, even though he doesn't think F1 should simply return to Paul Ricard. Not at Le Castellet, which is Paul Ricard, and not at Magny Cours either, where there is nothing, said the Italian. In Paris. Castellet was impossible for traffic. No, Formula 1 deserves a Grand Prix. Yeah, because Paris traffic is famously quiet, Briatore added. Not necessarily in the city centre or under the Eiffel Tower, but Paris would be magnificent. There must be all the hotel capacity to accommodate everyone that F1 attracts, the sponsors, the people who work for Formula 1. Everyone wants a Grand Prix in France. Formula 1 is really missing from France. Last year, F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali said he is understanding that the French government wants to focus on the Olympics Games rather than Formula 1. Maybe after that they will have a little more time for us to come back together on this issue, he told L'Equipe mid last year. Now, of course, the Summer Olympic Games have concluded in Paris. They were mixed, to say the least. I'm not going to get into that, of course. That's the whole can of worms. Let's focus on Formula 1. Yeah, I mean, realistically, I must admit, realistically, to get Formula 1 back onto the calendar in France, it has to really be a new track. Magny Cours is in the middle of nowhere. It's a decent circuit. It's not the best. It's very difficult to overtake. I would prefer going there to Paul Ricard. Paul Ricard, whenever I used to watch that, used to give me a migraine. The place is an absolute eyesore, to say the least. And again, relatively, I think it's in the middle of nowhere too. And that's not that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's in the middle of nowhere. But Spa is Spa. Spa's an incredible circuit. Paul Ricard isn't. It's just all right. It's a great testing track. It's not a great racing circuit. So I think, to be honest, I actually kind of agree with Flavio, to be honest. I think that if they're going to go back to France, they need to make a new track. But it's all about whether the French government wants to, invest in that, or other investors want to make that. I mean, we're seeing the trouble that Madrid is having right now. There's big rumours about that not coming onto the calendar to be the Spanish Grand Prix in 2026. No smoke without fire. So there's definitely trouble on that front. And yeah, it'd be great, because I'm sure the Grand Prix was first run in Paris. I know it was run in France, at least, back in 1906, I want to say. So, there is a history there, and like I said, there is a present too in a future. Even though there's no Renault engines in Formula 1, there's still going to be a French team, and presumably still some French drivers, Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon, of course, too. So, and Isaac Hadjar, for that matter, as well, of course. So yeah, I mean, for me, I'd love to see France back on the calendar, but it has to be at the right place. I don't want to go back to Paul Ricard. I could maybe live with Magny Cours from a TV point of view, but from a fan experience point of view, I can't see that ever hosting a Grand Prix. It just wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work. And it's very difficult to overtake around there. And even with the new cars next year, it might still be very difficult to overtake as well. It didn't produce the best races on the whole when it was in F1 back in the day. So yeah, what do you guys think? Would you like to see Formula 1 return to France? And if so, where? Would you want to see it at a new purpose-built track or somewhere else? Hey, Le Mans, why not? Many reasons why not. I'm just joking. But yeah, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, keep it tuned here to the F1chronicle.com if you want to see much more F1 news and opinion pieces just like this. So the pecking order, the order of performance of the Formula 1 cars heading into 2025. Ferrari are definitely going to be up there in my opinion. They had at times the fastest car last year and they finished second overall in the Constructors' Championship, not that far behind McLaren, of course. And an early rumour is suggesting that the new Ferrari for 2025 is 4/10 faster. Is that 4/10 faster overall, or is that 4/10 faster than any other car on the grid? Let's have a look, because that's not an insignificant margin by Formula 1 standards, of course. Full article on the F1chronicle.com. as always. A motivated Lewis Hamilton really could win a record 8th World Championship in 2025, his first season at Ferrari at the age of 40. That is the view of arch-rival Red Bull's powerful advisor Dr. Helmut Marko, as Hamilton and teammate Charles Leclerc got the all-new 2025 Ferrari up and running at Fiorano. "It felt fine," said Hamilton, with Leclerc also telling Sky Italia there were no negative surprises. Despite team boss Fred Vasseur admitting that the new Red Racer is an evolution rather than a 99% new, as he suggested months ago, it is now the only car in the entire field with a pull rod suspension at both the front and rear of the car. "We reached a limit with the old concept," admitted technical boss Loic Serra. "To give ourselves more development options, we had to switch to pull rods." Hamilton watched Leclerc debut in the 2025 Ferrari in the morning, but Leclerc did not return the favour later in the day. "I went to sleep because I came back from London at 4:30 in the morning, and at 7:30 I was already here for the first meeting. But I followed from a distance," he smiled while he was dreaming. Hey man, if you need to sleep, you need to sleep. Nothing wrong with that. Hamilton said he is getting along with his new teammate very well so far, although he does expect there to be arguments as the season goes on. "Charles is only 27 and he's probably more mature than I was at that age," said the British driver. "It will not be easy to beat him, especially as it's already his home." However, when Fernando Alonso and Sebastian Vettel arrived at Ferrari, they almost had instant success. "I didn't realise that, and it gives me even more respect for them," Hamilton said. "What I do know is that testing is more limited than ever. Just 3 days plus the 200 kilometers filming day, which is shared between us. Unfortunately, I haven't spent enough time in the car, and I'm still acclimatizing. I think it took me 6 months at Mercedes to get my first win, but I'm doing everything I can to be ready for this first race," he added. Early rumours suggested the new car, the SF25, is around 4 times faster than its predecessor in the simulator. That's a lot in the world where thousands count, Correa de la Sera reported. That is despite the fact that the nose and front wing are largely unchanged when compared to 2024. "If the rules are changing, it makes sense to combine this with a development of the wing," Vasseur said, referring to the mid-season clampdown on front wing flexibility. It is believed that Serra, a new arrival from Mercedes, insisted upon the pull rod change to solve Ferrari's problems with tyre wear. Red Bull's Marko thinks tyres will be key to how well Hamilton can do at Ferrari. "Hamilton has to get qualifying right, and it never was his strength." Right, this is the man who has the most pole positions in Formula 1 history. Let me just add that as a footnote. He told Österreich, "If he loses 2 or 3 attempts to Leclerc, he always has to work at a few positions. That puts a strain on the tyres." Some think that Hamilton is unlikely to succeed at Ferrari because of his advancing age, and with a teammate as competitive and settled as Leclerc. "I would be cautious about saying that," Marko noted. "If Hamilton is motivated, he continue where he left off in 2021. The comeback he delivered then was impressive." And if you don't know what that comeback was, I mean, it's not just a championship comeback, because it very much, kind of flip-flopped between Hamilton and Verstappen that year. It's a comeback in terms of his fitness, because he had long COVID, of course, didn't he? And, his fitness was not the same for a long, long time, and I think he really suffered because of that at times. So it was very impressive the way he came back. I mean, look, I know what Marco's trying to say, and I know what Marko does when he's saying he's never the best at qualifying. He is one of the best in qualifying, or he was anyway. Over 100 pole positions. You don't get that many poles and you're not good at it, right? You're pretty good at qualifying at that point. He's always been revered as back early in his career, he was very much revered as someone who was better in qualifying than the race. Now it's the other way around. I do think he's lost a yard of pace, as it were, to borrow a footballing expression. I do think over one lap he has lost a yard of pace, but his race pace is still as good as it ever has been. The thing with Hamilton is, and I saw this in a comment a while ago, and I do agree, to be honest, he needs a car that suits him. And it needs to suit him well. And if he's got that, he's unbeatable. No one can stop him. And if it's outside of that window, he does struggle. And I think we saw that at Mercedes in the last couple of years, to be honest. But let's see what happens, guys. It's going to be a fascinating season. I do kind of see what Marko is saying. But, that 4 attempts improvement, I don't know, that doesn't seem like... It seems decent, but it doesn't seem like a lot. But then again, this season is going to have a lot of teams focusing on 2026. So that might be a winner. That might be enough, but it might not be. We don't know. We've not even got into testing yet. We're going to get into that next week in Bahrain, of course. And we'll be here to do some coverage of that, of course. So, Fernando Alonso and Felipe Massa were teammates at Scuderia Ferrari between 2010 and 2013. And their relationship was not the best, to be honest. Felipe was asked to move out of the way in the most famous way ever in Formula 1 history. Fernando is faster than you, Felipe. Get out of the way, basically, said Rod over the radio back then. I do miss Rod. I really do on the radio. I loved him when he was a race engineer. But yeah, Felipe Massa has come out in the media and kind of slammed Fernando Alonso, calling him two-faced. I don't think he's referring to the DC character. So let's have a look. Let's have a look at the F1Chronicle.com, guys. This is sure to be spicy. Fernando Alonso is a Formula 1 driver and person with two faces, according to his former teammate Felipe Massa. Now retired Brazilian Massa told Relevo that he is not giving up in his legal pursuit against the sport to rectify the outcome of the Crashgate Mod 2008 championship. Felipe, just give it up, mate. You're not going to win it. In that year, prior to Alonso joining Ferrari, the Spaniard won the Spanish Grand Prix after Renault plotted a perfectly timed safety car triggered by teammate Nelson Piquet's deliberate crash. I have done a full video going over Crashgate and why it nearly destroyed Formula 1, and that is not hyperbole. It nearly destroyed the sport. It was that serious. Incredible driver, said Massa when asked about Alonso. One of the greatest phenomena in F1, without a doubt. That doesn't take away from what I think of him regarding the 2008 incident, he added. Fernando didn't behave well. He never spoke about the subject, and it's a shame because his greatness as a driver doesn't correspond to how he acted there. He said he didn't know anything, but he hid everything. That is not acceptable because we're talking about a great man at a sporting level. However, the 43-year-old Massa said that he had a decent relationship with Alonso during their time again at Ferrari. I never had a problem with Fernando, he said, but he always had two faces, two personalities, one that he showed, one that he brought out behind closed doors. He was only focused on himself. In 2010, we had a great car for the championship. He deserved to win, but he lost it, perhaps due to the mistaken strategy. Definitely due to the mistaken strategy in Abu Dhabi. Maybe he should sue Ferrari for that, Fernando. Maybe he feels aggrieved. Maybe he's due compensation. Were you injured at work and want compensation? Were you robbed of the 2010 Formula 1 World Championship? I think he might have been. I'm joking, of course. He lost 2 World Championships in the last race, and I think everything happens for a reason. Nothing is by chance in our lives. Oh, it's up Fernando. Karma. It's karma. Fernando Alonso is not a 4-time world champion because of karma. That's what Massa's basically saying. No. Oh, man. I just did a video about Franz Tost. I'm not sure what will come out first, this or that, but I said that Franz Tost sounded like a bitter old man, basically, in that. Felipe Massa sounds like a bitter old man, and he's not even old. He's like 43. Yeah, he's very much coming across as a guy who won a world championship for all of 10 seconds before it was taken away from him. Yeah, I can't believe he said that. I can't believe he said that. Fernando's going to get him back. Fernando's going to respond to this in the most Fernando way possible. You just know it. But yeah, I mean, he might, he said that they had a good relationship during their time at Ferrari together. I don't think they've got a good relationship now going off of that. But yeah, Fernando, I am not surprised about that. I'm not. Again, I've mentioned this in some form of media at some point. I think it might have been on a Grid Talk podcast or something like that. But in fact, it was, yeah. Where basically over Spygate in 2007, the whole reason, allegedly, why that all came out was that because Fernando Alonso leaked information, basically threatened to leak information. And Ron Dennis just basically said, "Oh, I've got to admit this now." He knows, and he's going to tell him. And that was when Ron Dennis and Fernando Alonso were in the same team at McLaren in 07. Fernando should have had the team's back, but instead he was playing these games like this, and he very nearly destroyed McLaren, something that took him a long time to recover from, unfortunately. Very tough time being a McLaren fan for a long time. Those days are gone, though, now. We're good again. Yeah. Alonso does strike me, unfortunately, as someone who shows a different face in public and one behind closed doors. I think what Massa's saying is accurate, but the suggestion that Alonso lost out on 2 world championships in 2010 and 2012 because of karma, because of the universe rectifying itself. Oh no. Yeah, I'll stop now. Honestly, that is just incredible. That. So Carlos Sainz has been in the media quite a bit recently. The Williams car for 2025 was revealed quite recently, of course. Now, this will not, of course, be the car that they actually race with. It will be developed between now and the start of the season, and of course, also during testing as well in Bahrain. But Carlos Sainz has been in the media saying, "Look, I'm not really expecting much from Williams this year. I'm not expecting much in terms of podium Williams and stuff like that, which I think is really quite wise of him to say that. I'd say that Williams will really struggle to get in the points on a regular basis, but of course he would never come out and say that. You know, he may well surprise us. He's an excellent driver, of course. He is a smooth operator. Let's not forget that. But when it comes to the future of Williams, they have a Mercedes engine. They've had a Mercedes engine ever since the start of the V6 era, and that has been a huge weapon in their arsenal, probably their biggest asset, really, to be honest, because especially in the early days, Mercedes had such an advantage on the rest of the field when there was the big engine change in 2014, going from the V8s to the V6s. And he's saying now that one of his key reasons for actually going to Williams is because of those Mercedes engines. Now, of course, we're getting the big regulation change again next year in 2026. The engines are going to be changed, and a smart man would probably put their money on Mercedes having the best engine. They've done it before in the last revolution of engines, so why not again? And that is probably a key reason behind Carlos Sainz thinking as well. But let's have a look what's been said here, guys. Full article on the F1chronicle.com as always. Carlos Sainz openly admits that a key reason for choosing Williams as his new Formula 1 home is the Mercedes engine. Already with a title-winning power unit in the current regulations era, Mercedes' customer engine program is also clearly a success, given that McLaren won the Constructors' Championship last year. So with the rules changing so significantly in 2026, Sainz admits to hoping that Mercedes will once again ace the start of the new regulations era in 2026. I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that was one of the reasons I've gone to Williams, because of the Mercedes engine in 2026. He told Soy Motor. It's one of the reasons. So I hope in that sense that Mercedes' engine will be part of the success and the reconstruction of Williams, the Spaniard added. With Red Bull and Mercedes' work teams turning him down, 30-year-old Sainz was forced to choose from midfield teams for his 2025 season after being dropped by Ferrari. I don't remember the exact moment when I decided to go to Williams because it was quite gradual, he said. I gradually convinced myself as I asked more questions and made more inquiries within the team. It's like everything. I might be wrong, I might be right, only time will tell. Sainz put a brave face on his situation last year as Ferrari prepared to welcome Lewis Hamilton for 2025, but the Spaniard admits that it was a very tough period. It was a very tough 6 months, he said, having to be performing on the track at the same time as trying to decide my future with the teams that they were in the middle of the back of the grid, he said. That was something that surely affected me a bit during the season, and I had to combine those two things, but I gradually convinced myself that Williams, was my best option and the one I most wanted. I mean, yeah, like I said in my other video about Sainz the other day, there is no getting away from the fact that it is a downturn, that it is a big downturn in his prospects for 2025, but for 2026, who knows? I mean, Williams, throughout a lot of the season in 2014, when they last switched engines, were the second fastest car on the grid, and they got third in the Constructors' Championship. You know, Adrian Newey has said, and you know, Adrian Newey is someone who is very experienced in Formula 1, very wise at the end of the day. He's come out and said that, well, you know, one engine may well dominate the formula in this new era of the regulations, and I can see that happening. I hope it doesn't happen, but I can see it happening. And Mercedes definitely have the know-how, the experience, and some great teams. They have the most teams, of course, 4 teams to still have for 2026. They're losing Aston Martin, but they are gaining Alpine. So Mercedes, McLaren, Williams, Alpine. They've all got Mercedes engines. He couldn't go to Mercedes. He was never going to go back to McLaren. And why the hell would he go to Alpine? So Williams actually is quite a smart bet in a sense for him. But let's see what happens, guys. Will Sainz's move to Williams pay off for him in the near future? In 2026, can he get back to podiums, get back to a win? You know, Pastor Maldonado is still the most recent driver to win a race for Williams. We need to correct that stat. It will have been 14 years by that point next year. We got to do something about that, guys. That can't be allowed to stand for much longer. That's ridiculous. But let us know your thoughts in the comments below as always, guys. Have a great day. Like, share, comment, subscribe. If you want to see some more from me in terms of behind the scenes content, extra exclusive member benefits, then head over to Patreon and become a patron. I would really, really appreciate it if you do so. And yeah, see you soon for some more content on the news of Formula 1 right here on the F1chronicle.com.